This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome to another episode of Kal's Corner here on the X-Zone Broadcast Radio Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. Welcome back. Well, for tonight's show, we have a rather full agenda, although it's only two subjects we'll cover, but that's okay. Keep in mind that on Kal's Corner, we cover everything from the paranormal to politics. So if you remember last week's episode here on the X-Zone Broadcast Radio Network, we talked about global warming and the myths and, let's be blunt, the lies that Al Gore says about global warming, which is inexcusable because nobody should lie, first off. And secondly, no valid case, no matter how noble the cause or subject, can ever be made on something that isn't true, okay? Al Gore should stick to facts, especially about a subject that concerns everybody, which again is climate change or global warming. And of course, we must move to protect the environment. But don't lie about it. Don't tell people the sky is falling when it's not. So it turns out that last week's episode was rather timely, and here's why. It turns out that in today's edition of the Telegraph, which is published out of Great Britain, the lead story says that climate change is not as threatening to the planet as previously thought, new research suggests. And as we showed in last week's episode, Great Britain, or the United Kingdom, is one of the leaders in the study of climate change because this whole global warming movement and government sponsorship of research dedicated to the subject got a big shot in the arm and basically was launched by former British Prime Minister Margaret Iron Lady Thatcher, as we showed last week. So, for the record, I'm not psychic. I don't claim to be psychic. I never will be. My psychic powers don't exist. They always fail me. And of course, I don't believe in any such thing. But I find it ironic and a bit amusing and satisfying that a week after on this show, on the X-Zone Broadcast Radio Network, that global warming and Al Gore were called for their lies and distortions, called out and exposed. And then a week later, vindication of that position where scientists have gone back 10 years worth of data, looked at the climate models, as the article indicates, have compared what was predicted and modeled versus reality, and they come to the conclusion that this has always been exaggerated, that the models were biased towards the alarmist view. And of course, that's where all the big bucks were in research, billions of dollars. You couldn't get any money if you said, oh, there's nothing to it. And of course, you were branded by alarmists and people who are into extremism, because they're intolerant of dissenting opinions. You would get branded as what's called a denier, which, as we pointed out in last week's episode, is tantamount to calling somebody in old times to be an enemy of the state. In fact, in the country of Canada now, so-called tolerant socialist Canada, they're actually hunting down and want to prosecute people who deny or are skeptical of the claims of global warming. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine having your own opinion which disagrees with what most people seem to believe, and then you get prosecuted? Whatever happened to the freedom of thought, free speech? That's a constitutional right, even in a country as beautiful and wonderful as Canada. But yet this is the mood, this is the way that things are going there if the left liberal wing of this political spectrum gets their way. It's really disgusting. So, anyway, check out the article, make your own decision, think for yourself. And I just want to point out one other thing. I'm not an expert on climate change. I never claimed to be. I'm not an expert in statistical modeling or, doing computer models with the weather. But I saw years ago, and I've said for years, it's a matter of public record, that the models are skewed towards alarmism, that they're biased, that many of the major studies, over 90% of them, were wrong. And I would often post things on Facebook pointing out this fact when the latest gloom and doom model crashed and burned. And I figured that if I can see it as a non-expert, and there are people out there who are a lot smarter than I'll ever be, they should be able to see it too. So shame on the ones that could not, especially the so-called experts on weather who have missed this entire thing. And the good news in this study is that it's not saying we don't need to do anything. It's just the opposite. It's simply saying that we have a bit more time to get our act together as a species, which is always a good thing because we continue to harm the environment unacceptably, and we must not do that. We must find alternatives to fossil fuels. And the latest estimate, for what it's worth, is that there's a 2 out of 3 chance now that there will be enough time to meet the admirable goals of the Paris Accord, and that this problem with it, that it's too little too late, may actually not be true, and that we might just get this under control, under the nick of time, for the better of humanity. And of course, that's always a good thing. So, wanted to give you an update on that. Okay, we'll be back after this commercial break and we'll get into the meat of the show. I'm Kal Korff. We'll be right back. I'm your host.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Is it science or is it magic? Once a magical thing has been scientifically proven, is it no longer magic? Or is magic simply the science of tomorrow? Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, on The Science of Magic, a syndicated radio program dedicated to combining the science and magic of today's dynamic and controversial topics to co-create new solutions. By triangulating information from today's leading experts from the scientific and magical fields, we uncover expansive and evolutionary truths you won't find anywhere else. Join us daily on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, as I interview the share thoughts with the amazing guests from both science and magic. The resulting knowledge is unprecedented. As a gift to you, the listener, past episodes can be accessed on our website free of charge at thescienceofmagic.net.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
Welcome back to segment 2 of Kal's Corner here on the X-Zone Broadcast Radio Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. Rob McConnell is the executive producer of this show. So we opened up with an update on global warming, so-called climate change, and how last week's show exposed the false claims of Al Gore and other climate change alarmists, exposing how often what they say is not true, or actually in some instances, unfortunately, is an outright lie. Then, of course, in today's paper in the Telegraph in Great Britain, major story confirming that the so-called global warming alarmism mentality and past statements have been wildly exaggerated. And the good news is we've got more time to get our collective act together as a species, which is always great. It's always wonderful to have more time than you thought you might have when you have to confront what is truly a universal global crisis, and that is trying to protect the environment. So let's end talking about that on this note here. Most people on this planet love chocolate. In fact, scientists confirmed years ago that women have a genetic disposition towards loving chocolate. And of course, any man who's worth his salt and has dated a woman will tell you that one of the many roads to her heart is, of course, listening and giving her some chocolate. So the idea that women love chocolate is genetically true. They are genetically disposed towards it more than men are. Unfortunately, humanity's appetite for consuming chocolate is causing destruction in the environment and, of course, farming of the cocoa plant. It's being overfarmed. And, of course, in Latin America, which tends to be a sinkhole politically and socially and economically, and, of course, nobody follows the laws down there. It's part of a problem region of the world, along with Africa, some other places. It's bad news on that front. And that's one example of hopefully where eventually, unfortunately, corporate interests will cause everybody to get their act together. And in the pursuit of the almighty dollar or euro or whatever currency these large companies are making, maybe this will force people to be more responsible in their farming and not cause the runaway damage that they are now to at least the cocoa crops that are being grown in ever increasing numbers and actually endangered now because they're not being handled responsibly to supply chocolate to the world so that they can enjoy their sweets. All right, let's switch to the main subject now for tonight's show. It is about everyone's favorite politician, or at least someone who people have strong opinions on, a very polarizing figure. Her name is Hillary Clinton. She, of course, is the former First Lady of the United States, the wife of former President Bill Clinton. and former Secretary of State, former Senator of New York, yada, yada, yada. And of course, she was the losing candidate who ran for president twice, getting defeated in 2008 to Barack Obama, and then, of course, in 2016 to, amazingly, Donald Trump. Now, we're going to talk about Hillary Clinton because she's still very relevant. The reason she's relevant is because she's actually going to be on a tour promoting her new book called What Happened until the Christmas season. And she's being paid millions of dollars to do this. She's not releasing publicly the amount of money that she got, but it is several $1 million. And her previous book called Hard Choices, she was paid roughly $8 million for it. And the woman who gave her that nice fat paycheck, tough gig if you can get it, is a good friend of hers who happens to run her publishing company, HarperCollins. And of course, the same person has done it again, wrote her another fat check. But because Hillary was deservedly criticized for essentially what are pay-to-play services, that is, that when she became Secretary of State, all of a sudden, hundreds of millions of dollars, not coincidentally, started to flow into the Clinton Foundation. You can actually do a graph on Follow the Money and show that Hillary would advocate things that were in line with what her donors wanted. And it's not a coincidence. It was absolutely pay to play. Most voters were aware of that. And it was a factor in her defeat. But of course, Hillary would never admit that. So the reason we're going to talk about Hillary Clinton and expose her is because being an American, and she's American as well, and being a journalist who has reported extensively on Hillary Clinton over the years, I know a lot about the Clintons, in fact, more than most people do, because I've made a point to do my homework on them. I also have a good friend that I worked with who knows them personally and actually grew up with Bill Clinton's brother. So I have a lot of good sourced information, most of which does not come from him. It's independent of him and any single person. It's also collective type info. But let's get into some of this here because, like Al Gore, Hillary Clinton has a problem with the truth, especially when she makes mistakes. In fact, the Clintons have this infamous track record of blaming everybody but themselves. And when it's not somebody else's fault that they'll specifically name, they will, of course, blame a vast right-wing conspiracy, even when it doesn't exist. So in the case of Hillary Clinton, one of the claims she has made, which again, folks, I'll be very blunt about it, is an outright lie, which we will expose tonight exclusively for the first time publicly on this show and on this network. And we will prove it. I'll give you all the data where you can independently check the facts yourself. And in 2 days, there should be available on Amazon.com and on Apple's iTunes a publication that I have written that is going to tell you a lot of what you're going to hear exclusively for the first time tonight. So let's get into it. Now, Hillary cites as one of the reasons, her book, What Happened, is supposed to be a analysis of what happened, what didn't go right, why she did not win the White House. What she has done in this book is, first of all, you look at the title, it's What Happened, but it's not what happened ? In other words, she's not asking the question. Instead, she's telling us what happened. And she's got what she considers to be facts to back up what she's saying. And if you read her book, and I've done it, it seems credible when you first look at it. But when you really start to think critically and objectively, it's got serious credibility problems. In fact, if Hillary Clinton really believes what she has said and what she has written, then I'd say that she needs some serious psychiatric treatment. It seems that she's in denial of the fact that just enough Americans don't like her. And you can see this in the book because she thanks the tens of millions of people who voted for her. What she doesn't say is why they voted for her. It depends on each individual. Some voted for her because they love her. That's fine. That's their decision, their choice. But others voted for her because they didn't like Donald Trump. In fact, my cousin, who actually supported Bernie Sanders in the election, but of course Sanders did not win the primaries against Hillary. Hillary became the nominee. She admitted and that she voted for Clinton only because she didn't want to support Trump. She doesn't like Donald Trump. Fine, that's her opinion. I'm not judging it right or wrong. She has a right to it. But she's not the only one who did that. So when Hillary just thanks everyone who supported her, in a way, when you read the book, that's comical, where she implies that because the American people loved her, and she keeps emphasizing that she won the majority of the votes, the popular vote. Well, that's an empty victory, if you will, because the American system to become president of the United States has never depended on the popular vote. The reason the Electoral College exists is to keep Florida, New York, Texas, and California from essentially deciding who's going to be president. The electoral system, which the Democrats only seem to hate when they lose an election, they aren't busy trying to overturn it when they win, of course, they're hypocrites. It's meant to serve as a check and balance so that the rest of the country has at least a significant say in who becomes the next president. Otherwise, those 4 states where most of the population exists would be able to essentially call all the shots. And we wouldn't be the United States of America, we'd be the 4 states of America for all practical purposes. So Hillary did win the popular vote, no question. But it doesn't matter. It's like saying, I won the lottery even though the lottery didn't exist. So yeah, she won the popular vote. So what? The reason she's not in the White House is because the popular vote is irrelevant. Little key indicator there. So, of all the claims that Hillary is making, all of the excuses as to why she lost, she has nearly 30 of them. One of the most outrageous and deceptive, calculating, dishonest remarks is her claim that voter suppression in the state of Wisconsin caused her to lose the state, and of course, inferring one of the reasons for the election. Now, that's interesting because the issue of voter suppression, to be clear, is absolutely important. It is a fact that the Republicans play voter suppression games. Real quickly, how they do some of this is they'll close polling places early or make sure there's not enough of them in areas that the demographics indicate that Latinos or African Americans will live, or other so-called minorities who would tend to vote for the Democratic Party. They also go ahead and make it tougher to vote because they require voter ID. Now, I support voter ID. I think if you have to show ID to open a checking account or have a Social Security account or even buy a pack of cigarettes, although I don't smoke, then of course to cast your vote for who's going to be the next president of the United States, you better show some ID. You shouldn't just be able to walk in and vote. When I registered to vote in the state of Iowa, I didn't have to show any ID. And I told the clerk at the counter, you're lucky I'm one of the good guys, because if I was here illegally, I could cast a vote that was not valid and you'd count it as valid. So that was my experience, and that helped convince me that we need voter ID laws. So getting back to Hillary Clinton, her claim that voter suppression caused her to lose the state of Wisconsin is one of the most ridiculous, imaginatory, fraudulent statements of her laundry list of excuses as to why she's not in the White House and lost to Donald Trump. What we're going to do now, and especially starting after the commercial break shortly, is get into the facts that even Hillary Clinton can't deny. She's going to be truthful, and she's not. She's making the point not to be, that prove that voter suppression, if it existed at all in Wisconsin, had nothing to do with why she lost the state. Let's start with the fact that Hillary Clinton has never won the state of Wisconsin. Most voters there do not like her. You can make an objective case for that. She lost the state in 2008 running against Obama by roughly 20 points. She lost it again to Bernie Sanders in 2016, and she lost it to Donald Trump. She's never won the state. In fact, she took it for granted, even though she'd never won there, which is really arrogant. She didn't even campaign in the state. Now, what are the odds of winning a state if you don't bother showing up trying to win it? well, depending on the state, in this case Wisconsin, it's not going to help your cause. But that's what Hillary did, and she admits in her book, in one of the few areas where she is telling the truth, that she did take the state for granted. In fact, she considered it to be part of what is called the blue wall of states that accounts for most of the electoral votes needed to win the presidency. So let's get into this after the commercial break here. We'll start breaking down the facts and expose Hillary Clinton's false claims. I'm Kal Korff, back in a moment.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
Hello, I'm Justina Marsh, and with my dad Pete, we are going to present a new show called Too Good to Be True. Together, we are aiming to discover more truths about this world and beyond. Do you have unanswered questions about the world? Do you ever wonder about aliens, conspiracy theories, or the universe? There are many shows discussing subjects such as pyramids or UFOs, but we want to relay this information based on our own research, including from spiritual means. Hopefully, listeners will be helped with their own beliefs and will appreciate the psychic insights that add to the previous research and information. We both look forward to sharing this insight and beginning this journey with our listeners. Visit xzbn.net for more information about when to listen.
Ancient prophecies, legends, and current events indicate we're entering a high-frequency era supporting enlightenment. During expansive times, old rules fail, necessitating access to the ever-shifting currents of life for guidance. There's an ancient form of shamanism through which we can obtain the information we need. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Art School, with a great new provision for those interested in spiritual evolution and personal empowerment. Galactic Shamanism, Art of the Ancients, Key to Tomorrow, is an upcoming series of leading-edge online affordable classes designed to guide and support you and your family during these times of transition. Embrace the magic. Empower your life. Study Galactic Shamanism at findyourpathhome.com.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back to the next segment of Cal's Corner here on the X Zone Broadcast Radio Network. This is segment 3. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is the legendary one and only Rob McConnell. Now, we were talking about Hillary Clinton. Let's talk about probably the worst excuse that she has given as to why she's not in the White House. Now, keep in mind that with the Clintons, and Hillary certainly is a living, shining example of this, it's never her fault. It's always somebody else's. And that's just disgusting not to admit the truth and own up to your responsibility, because that means you never learn anything. And what's interesting is that if you look at polls about her popularity, even today after the election and her Woe Is Me book tour, which is still going to go on for the next couple of months, she's polling lower than Donald Trump, and his approval ratings had dropped to some 37%. When Hillary started opening her mouth and saying, this is why I lost, this is why I lost, this is why I lost, the majority of American voters love me, yet I'm not in the White House, her polling numbers dropped to 36%. So that's kind of funny that Trump would poll more popular than her, even after all the mistakes he's made since he's been in office. Now, speaking of Hillary, Hillary cites a fake study to explain losing the state of Wisconsin, which is a state she's never won, ever, period, in her life, and she refused to campaign in against Trump. Now, let me tell you how this excuse train started. There was a statement by Senator Tammy Baldwin, who's a Democrat from Wisconsin. She posted on her Twitter account on May 17, 2017. She says, quote, voter turnout in 2016 was reduced by approximately 200,000 votes because of Wisconsin's photo ID laws. Now, PolitiFact, which is an online fact-checking entity that Hillary Clinton does read all the time, in fact, she's quoted from it before, they analyzed Baldwin's statement and gave it and rated it as mostly false. In fact, PolitiFact's comment was, quote, we rate Baldwin's statement mostly false, unquote. Now, this was back in May of 2017, so several months ago. This was before Hillary Clinton's book came out. The idea that Hillary Clinton doesn't know this is beyond credibility, because what Hillary has done is, in her claim that voter suppression in Wisconsin cost her to lose the state and may have cost her as many as 200,000 votes. Well, there's two problems with that view. One is you're assuming that all 200,000 votes, if they were suppressed, keyword if, and they were not, would have gone for Hillary, and that, of course, is just nonsense. And secondly, it's not true. In fact, this number is totally made up in a bogus statistical study that was done by a vested interest that supports Hillary Clinton, which Hillary doesn't mention, of course, in her book. So what am I talking about specifically? Let me get into details here. One of the critical states that Hillary Clinton, again, just couldn't be bothered to visit and campaign in, now this is when she ran for president against Donald Trump after she secured the Democratic Party's nomination, was, of course, Wisconsin. Obviously, it takes a lot of special talent to make a point to avoid a vital state one needs to win in an election, and yet this is exactly what she did. Put another way, no one forced Hillary Clinton to avoid campaigning in Wisconsin. Instead, she chose to. So what is Hillary's excuse for why she lost this critical state to Trump? As usual, it's never her fault. Her lying explanation is imaginary voter suppression. Now, Hillary Clinton's sheer arrogance in wrongly assuming that she would automagically win Wisconsin proves just how out of touch and in denial she was, and how entitled she felt she was, and worse, still remains. Not surprisingly, she hasn't learned a damn thing, even after her 2 defeats in Wisconsin, both in 2016 and her third one dating back to 2008, when during that first time that she ran for president, Barack Obama trounced her in this state. Indeed, Hillary's stated excuse isn't even new or original. She is in fact just blindly aping, as we just mentioned, the discredited claim made by Senator Tammy Baldwin, who, surprise, represents the state of Wisconsin and, of course, is a Democrat. Now, Baldwin has falsely stated, as just mentioned, that voter turnout in 2016 was reduced by approximately 200,000 votes because of Wisconsin's voter ID laws. Now, she made her fake news claim once again in Twitter on her own account on May 17th, 2017. And for the record, by the way, I contacted Senator Baldwin. I sent her my own counter tweet telling her that her statement was not true and that she should stick to facts. I'm happy to report that her latest polling, because she's up for re-election, shows that people are tired of her false statements, and now, for the first time ever since she's held office, more voters in Wisconsin do not like her versus ones that do. She has a 51% unfavorability rating currently among Wisconsin voters. And her argument about voter suppression, when most Wisconsin voters know better, is not helping her cause. Now, when pressed to provide evidence to support her accusation, Senator Baldwin has cited a study that was commissioned by Priorities USA Action, which is a political action committee. Now, Priorities USA Action had contracted with a company called Civis Analytics to do a study analyzing Hillary's defeat in Wisconsin. The firm concluded that voter suppression was responsible, quote unquote, since the 2016 U.S. presidential election was the first that had been held under the tightened new voter ID laws in the state of Wisconsin. Now, I will tell you that here you have a study sponsored by Priorities USA Action, which again is a super PAC. Is it right? Is it accurate? Well, if only reality were this simple, and it's not. The attempt to either downplay or delegitimize Donald Trump and his victory over Hillary Clinton is not only predictable, it's shameful, and this is exactly what Hillary is doing. Her latest antic is to try to question the legitimacy of Trump's victory, saying that all these other factors, including voter suppression in Wisconsin, explain his victory, not that just enough Americans said, "We don't like you, Hillary, we're voting for the Donald." Again, this is a disturbing and disgusting pattern with the Clintons that, again, it's never my fault, but always someone else's. So instead of just accepting the facts that most Wisconsin voters rejected her, plain and simple, Hillary, again, has never been popular with Wisconsin voters because she's lost all 3 attempts to win primaries or the election in that state. Let's briefly go over some of the evidence that proves that she's not telling the truth and that the so-called study is flawed. Now, in her book, What Happened, Hillary writes, and this is a quote, "In Wisconsin, where I lost by just 22,748 votes, a study from Priorities USA estimated that the new voter ID law helped reduce turnout by 200,000 votes, primarily from low-income and minority areas." Now, as is quite common with Hillary Clinton, what she does not tell you is where the real important contextual details exist. All right? So objectively speaking, and this is what the most Wisconsin voters have never warmed or liked Hillary Clinton, period. Hillary won't admit it, but it's the truth. The undeniable evidence for this exists in the fact, again, that when she ran for president in 2008 against Barack Obama, she lost the state of Wisconsin by a large margin. According to Wisconsin's own state elections board, Hillary won their contest by a margin, or Obama won their contest, by a margin of 58.8%. Now, Hillary polled 40.76%. This means that Obama's victory margin was some 18 percentage points. Vote totals were 646,851 votes for Obama, 453,954 votes for Hillary. Again, his margin of victory over Hillary was 192,897 votes. That's a lot of votes. It was a wash, in other words. Now, Hillary was so despised by Wisconsin's voter base that Barack Obama even managed to erode her once formidable leads among women and that she had previously enjoyed, and even beat her among white voters. Hillary was further humiliated when Wisconsin's governor, Jim Doyle at the time, endorsed Barack Obama instead of her. Now, in 2016, Hillary fared even worse in Wisconsin. Just like in 2008, she failed to win the state. Instead, her rival, Bernie Sanders, did, who beat her by a margin of 56.59% to 43.05%. Sanders received some 570,192 votes versus Hillary's 433,739, according to, again, Wisconsin's State Elections Board. So Sanders' victory margin over Hillary was 13.5%. It was lower than Obama's, but it was still double digits and significant. Now, these 2016 voter tallies mean that during the state's primary against Sanders versus in 2008 when she ran against Barack Obama, some 20,215 fewer voters cast their ballots for Hillary. Sanders' total was 570,192 votes. It was 116,238 more votes than Hillary's highest total was when she competed against Obama. And this is in a contest that she still lost. So once again, Hillary has never won Wisconsin. Her track record is a perfect 0 for 3. Now, logically, you'd think that having never won a state, Wisconsin in this case, not even coming close, that Hillary would at least be smart enough to campaign there against Trump. What did she have to lose? Instead, arrogantly and egotistically, she took the voters of Wisconsin for granted, wrongly assuming once again that she would win there, ignoring the reality of her own painful past history that she had never won that state before. Now, foolishly, she in her campaign, and she admits this in her book, again, Wisconsin's part of these blue wall states that since 1992, this group of 18 states, which includes the District of Columbia for a total of 19 voting bloc entities, they had always swung towards the Democrats back in the days when the party was genuinely focused on the middle class and labor unions instead of doing what it does today, which is engage in phony pandering and contrived identity politics. Now, these blue wall states are important because when added up together, they provide a combined total of 242 electoral college votes. This is of the 270 that are required to win the White House. So if you line up the blue wall states, plus you take California or any other large state such as Florida or Texas or New York, you get basically, again, the White House. And this was Hillary Clinton's strategy. So the study that was done by Priorities USA is a super PAC that originally started with Barack Obama's campaign. In fact, the company that did the study, Civis Analytics, was founded by the chief analytics officer for the Obama campaign, who reported directly to David Axelrod, who was Obama's chief strategist that won him the White House. We'll be back in a moment and continue our expose of Hillary Clinton.
The Earth is under ever-increasing pressure from untenable lifestyles and growing populations. Yet, viable answers seem in short supply. What if I told you there's an ancient form that can empower you to take charge of your life? What if your entire family could be enfolded and supported by life itself, finding safe passage through challenging times? I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Art School, with great news: an upcoming series of leading-edge online affordable classes based in an ancient form of shamanism, easily learned and used by your entire family. Galactic Shamanism, Art of the Ancients, Key to Tomorrow are a series of online adult and children's lessons instructing your entire family on natural law, how to cooperate with and be supported by the powers of the universe. Visit findyourpathhome.com to find these unique and powerful classes.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Are you curious? Do you want to learn more about how the world works and have fun at the same time? Study coincidences with me, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on my Connecting with Coincidence radio show, here on the XZBN network. Listen to Jungians theorize, statisticians randomize, true believers evangelize, while I categorize. I dance to the rhythm of coincidences. People who experience me see more of them. Maybe something on the show matches a thought in your mind. Let us know. Expand your mind to the weirdness happening around you. Synchronicity spoken here, there, and everywhere. For more information, put Connecting with Coincidence in your search engine and find my website, my social media sites, and my blog.
What is truth? Historically, we viewed things as either being true or false. Now, as we enter a more expansive era, we find the question is not, is it true, but rather, how true is it? I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, host of The Science of Magic Radio, a syndicated, internationally broadcast radio program dedicated to uncovering this ever-expanding truth. Join me daily on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, as I interview today's leading experts from the fields of science and magic to uncover the hidden truth between the lines drawn in the sand. What we unearth in our discussions is not only amazing, but totally unprecedented. You won't want to miss a single episode. In service to our listeners, past episodes can always be found on our website with our compliments at thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome back to the final segment of Kal's Corner here on the X-Zone Broadcast Radio Network. Again, my name is Kal Korff. I'm your host, and the executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. So let's wrap this up in the final segment here. Again, Hillary writes in her book What Happened. She says, quote, "The best estimate," key word here, folks, best estimate, is that 200,000 people in Wisconsin were either denied or chilled in their efforts to vote. I don't think we believed at the time before the election that it would be anything like that, anything as big as that. Now, that's a quote from Hillary's book. So not only did voter suppression happen that caused the loss of 200,000 votes, but she says she couldn't have imagined this happening. Well, the problem is that Hillary's claim is 100% false, because when she says that this is the best estimate on this issue, it's actually arguably the worst. The study she then references and goes on to laud was exposed and discredited several months before her book came out. The idea that Hillary Clinton is innocently or blissfully unaware of this fact belies credibility, for its condemnation has been widespread and was even fact-checked by PolitiFact, which again is an online news entity that Clinton herself has quoted from in the past, and Clinton certainly reads on a regular basis. So if she genuinely has no idea that the study she cites has been debunked and is truly ignorant of this development, then all I can say is shame on her. So let's expose now this study that was done by Priorities USA Action. Now, again, this is a political action committee, okay? And what Hillary doesn't tell you in her book is that this political action committee was the largest and most powerful political action committee that funded Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign for the White House. So here's Hillary Clinton, who has received at least $132 million from this super PAC, whose mission is to put her in the White House. And they cough up this study saying, Hillary, you lost Wisconsin because of voter suppression. Can you imagine how this is a bit awkward? Talk about a conflict of interest. And then it turns out that this political action committee didn't even do the study. They actually paid another company who says they're interested only in the truth to advance the truth and analysis of big data to improve humanity and humankind. That's an admirable cause. But what this company really does is they don't hide the fact that they exist to push the political agenda of the Democratic National Party. In other words, it may not necessarily always be for the better of humanity. In fact, there are things that the Democrats want done, which one can argue hurts the human race. So, what you will not see in Hillary Clinton's book, and she doesn't admit in any of her interviews because they're self-serving and not honest, is that this study was promoted and given to her by Priorities USA Action. That is her largest political action committee, and it has given her at least $132 million, okay? And not coincidentally, a man named Guy Cecil is a key figure in Priorities USA Action. He is not only a member of its board of directors, he was, of course, Hillary's political director during her losing bid to win the White House in 2008. So this makes Hillary's excuse about voter suppression affecting some 200,000 people both comical and tragic, because it's a real embarrassment for her, this woe is me claim that she was a victim when there's no evidence that this was true. Now, again, the study that Priorities USA was promoting was contracted with a company called Civis Analytics. Again, not coincidentally, and to expose how incestuous and dishonest this claim is, Civis Analytics is run by a man named Dan Wagner, who was the chief analytics officer for Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign. During that time, Wagner reported directly to David Axelrod, who was Obama's two-term chief strategist and former senior advisor to Obama during his first term in office, until he resigned in the year 2011 to lead Obama's successful 2012 re-election campaign as its senior strategist. Now, here's the kicker. According to Civis Analytics' own internet website, in their section called What We Believe, the company says the following, quote, "We're obsessed with the truth and won't stop until we find it." The company then goes on to say, "We believe that truth leads action and that we should all be accountable to data. We strive to make the world a better place, and everything we do is with that in mind." And then on the company's website, it says in the Our Mission section that, quote, "Building a truth-driven world, an alternative to dispassionate big data analysis companies, we're here to help you make sense of all the data that's out there and use it to your advantage. Our mission is to deliver truth, to empower organizations, to do work focused on the good of humanity, We contribute by helping organizations understand how to use technology and information to change the world for the better. Now, let's be clear. There's no question that these lofty sounding objectives are arguably admirable. It's always noble, as in a good thing, whenever a company and people try to improve and help the world, to be driven by and further truth and understanding. Yet where concerns this issue of alleged voter suppression somehow preventing some 200,000 people from casting their votes in the state of Wisconsin, Civis Analytics has made a serious error, one so harmful and damaging to its own self-proclaimed public objectives that their study has invalidated itself. Keep in mind again that this company claims we're obsessed with the truth and won't stop until we find it. Well, obviously the analysts who did this study didn't get the memo because it's flawed and has been discredited. Now, Civis Analytics claims that they have 136 employees who have 224 degrees and hold 123 different jobs. Yet even with all of this purported analytical and statistical expertise, they still blew it in the study. Well, what happened to peer review? It's funny that that should be mentioned. I have been one of countless journalists who have contacted the company several times, and I've asked them point blank, what were the methodologies that you used? Because I have statistics that show that their methods were flawed. The company refuses to share with the media and other statistical experts what methods they used. The reason they're not sharing that info likely is because they can't justify it. And here's why. It turns out that voter participation in the state of Wisconsin actually went up after voter ID laws were passed. Now, think about that for a second. You pass stricter limits on how people can vote, meaning they have to show ID, and then the number of people who do vote goes up. Now, compare that to the state of New York, which has no voter ID laws, has many times more population than Wisconsin does, and yet the rate of their voters fell down to number 49 out of 51 states. So this idea that there's a correlation always is not true. And the problem with the Civis Analytics study is that they compared what happened in Wisconsin to that of a couple other states like Minnesota, whose dynamics are very different. They might have well compared them to Puerto Rico because it would have been just as invalid. All right? So there's no way that you can say that if X number of people were not able to vote, that it was because they were suppressed. In fact, surveys done after the election overwhelmingly show that the main reason Wisconsin voters did not vote in the large numbers in 2016 that they did in 2012 was because this time around they were not really enthusiastic over the two choices for president. That would include Hillary Clinton, that would include Donald Trump. And of those who were enthusiastic in the areas that Trump managed to turn into supporting his campaign, more people turned out determined to elect him or deny Hillary the White House. In other words, Trump did something that voter suppression cannot explain. He actually flipped the states of Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, these so-called blue wall states. He turned just enough of them, and they'd always gone Democratic since 1992, and it was a combination of flipping those states that gave him the victory. Wisconsin voters this time around in the final stretch were not excited over Hillary Clinton's candidacy, so not as many people voted, especially among blacks. They just didn't care. Yet when Barack Obama ran for president, voter participation spiked at record levels during the first campaign in 2008. They were down in 2012, but still high, and then of course had gone down again in this latest contest. And a lot of blacks, of course, voted for Barack Obama. So the answer and real explanation, folks, as to why Hillary Clinton lost Wisconsin is because she's Hillary Clinton. The state voters, majority of them, have never liked her. That's why she's 0 for 3. So when she's out there lying and saying it's the study that proves it, the study doesn't prove anything. The study is bogus. It has a vested self-interest to further the agenda of the Democratic Party and the news that poor Hillary was the victim of voter suppression rather than the reality that most voters just didn't like her. And although she won the popular vote, it's irrelevant in the United States because you need to win the Electoral College. And Trump won the Electoral College by a large margin, and he now sits in the White House and not Hillary Clinton. So don't buy into the myths that she's spreading because she's selling you snake oil. I'm blunt with you about this. Thanks for joining us here on another episode of Cal's Corner here on the X-Zone Broadcast Radio Network. We'll be back next week where we cover everything from politics to the paranormal.